What would you do if you realized, in a single sentence, that you were never truly part of your own family? That realization doesn't come loudly. It doesn't arrive with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes, it comes wrapped in a smile. At a dinner table, on a holiday, and by the time you understand it, everything has already changed. The table had been set for 20, not 19, not around that. Exactly 20. My mother was precise about things like that. Place settings aligned, glasses polished, napkins folded the same way she'd taught us as children. And I noticed those details. I always noticed details. Like how I had driven 40 minutes to get there, through slow evening traffic to my parents' house in Deerfield. Like how I brought a full case of Cointreau, even though no one had asked me to. Like how I had also made roasted vegetables for my nephew, because he refused to eat anything else. And a casserole my mother had specifically requested 3 days earlier over the phone. Details mattered to me. They always had. Even when they didn't seem to matter to anyone else. The house smelled exactly like it did every Easter. Garlic, fresh bread, something roasting slowly. And beneath it all, that faint, metallic warmth of old radiators humming through the walls. It should have felt comforting. Familiar. Instead, it felt like stepping into a role I already knew I was expected to play. Relatives moved through rooms in loose, overlapping conversations. My cousins drifted between the kitchen and dining room, laughing too loudly at things that weren't that funny. My father stood at the head of the table. He wore that colored shirt, the one he only brought out for occasions he considered important. It was his quiet signal that something about the day mattered. My mother, though, she was the one to watch. She had that look, a brightness in her eyes, a kind of contained anticipation, the kind that meant she had been waiting all day, maybe longer, to say something. I noticed that too. I always noticed before anyone else did. Dinner began the way it always did. Noise, overlapping voices, plates passing, someone asking for salt that was already within reach. For a while, everything felt normal, almost easy. But then, just before the second course, my mother stood up. She picked up her glass, tapped it lightly with a butter knife, and waited. That small, deliberate sound cut through the room. And slowly, conversations faded. Chairs shifted. Eyes turned. Everyone knew this moment. She had something to say. And when my mother had something to say, it usually meant everything else would orbit around it. "I have a surprise," she said, smiling. And just like that, the room leaned toward her. She paused, not because she needed to, but because she understood timing. Then she said it. Flights, hotel, everything. A full family trip to Nice. In July, for Celeste's wedding. The reaction was immediate, explosive. Excitement filled the room like a spark catching dry wood. My aunt pressed her hands together, already imagining it. My uncle laughed, making some predictable comment about French wine. Someone started asking dates before my mother had even finished speaking. And Celeste, she didn't look surprised. She simply lifted her chin slightly, just enough. Like she always did when the moment belonged to her. She was radiant. 32. Completely at ease being the center of it all, because she always had been. If you've ever been in a room where one person naturally becomes the gravity everyone else orbits around, you know exactly what that looked like. My mother sat back down, satisfied, not just pleased, but fulfilled, as if she had orchestrated something beautiful, as if she had made the world align correctly again. I waited. Because there's always a moment after excitement peaks, a natural pause where reality begins to settle back in. And in that pause, I asked a simple question. What weekend is the ceremony? It wasn't confrontational. It wasn't loaded. Just practical. My mother turned to me, and for a split second, just a fraction, there was something in her expression. Not anger, not even irritation, something softer, dismissive. "Oh, sweetheart," she said lightly, "you won't be coming." And just like that, the room shifted. Except it didn't, because no one reacted. "Marcus needs someone at home," she continued, in that same gentle tone. "You understand? The way you explain something obvious, to a child." Then she turned away, back to Celeste, back to the conversation, And just like that, everything continued. As if nothing had happened, I picked up my fork, and I kept eating. If you're wondering why I didn't say anything immediately, why I didn't push back, why I didn't challenge it right there, then you don't understand how things had worked in our family for a long time. Because this wasn't about one comment. Not really. This was about something that had been building quietly for years. Celeste had always been the one they believed in, the one they invested in, the one whose future felt expandable. At 24, she moved to Charleston for culinary school, then pivoted again, each time with support, financial support, emotional support, unquestioned support. There had been tuition payments, a car when hers broke down, money when a business didn't work out, another round of funding when she repositioned herself professionally. None of this was ever discussed openly. It didn't need to be, it simply happened, because it was for Celeste and me. I had a different role. I was the reliable one, the stable one, the one who answered calls no matter the time. The one with a job that sounded boring but became incredibly important when something went wrong. Healthcare contract administration. Not glamorous, but useful. Useful in ways people don't praise but depend on. 7 years earlier, when my father's consulting firm lost its biggest client, I had done something practical, something structural. I created a dedicated savings and investment account. I contributed to it consistently, carefully, deliberately, and then I gave my parents access, authorized access, so they wouldn't have to ask. So emergencies wouldn't feel like emergencies. It worked. The account paid for things that mattered, a roof repair, medical bills insurance didn't cover, tutoring for a cousin who needed help. Over time, though, something changed. The account stopped being mine in their minds. It became the family account. They spoke about it casually, as if it had always existed, as if it belonged to the household itself. Vacations came out of it. Large expenses came out of it. Even Celeste's wedding deposit. And no one, not once, revisited the one detail that actually mattered. The account was in my name, only mine. Access was just access, and access can be taken away. I had never needed to. Until that night. Because sitting there, surrounded by family, being calmly told I wasn't invited to my own sister's wedding, something became very clear. Not emotionally, not dramatically. Structurally, I waited, because timing matters. Celeste was describing the venue now. A restored estate, courtyard, rolling hills. Everyone listened like it was already real, already theirs. I let the moment breathe. Then I asked casually, "Do we know the total budget for the trip?" My father answered, "A large number. Bigger than most people would say out loud." I nodded. "Is that coming from the investment account?" "It's already handled," my mother said, quickly, firmly. Conversation closed. That was the moment. I reached into my pocket, unlocked my phone, opened my banking app. "I just want to make sure everything's set correctly," I said, calm, even. Then I looked at my father. "There's something about that account you should understand." And that's where everything began to change. Because some decisions don't raise your voice, they just quietly redraw the lines of everything. There was a brief pause after I said it. Not long enough for anyone to fully process, but just enough for something subtle to shift beneath the surface. My father's attention sharpened. "What do you mean?" he asked. I didn't rush. I tapped the screen twice. It was almost disappointingly simple. No dramatic confirmation screen, no warning message, just a quiet, efficient process designed exactly for situations like this. Authorization removed. I placed my phone face down on the table, and for a second nothing happened. Then my mother's phone buzzed, a small sound, almost forgettable, except she didn't ignore it. She glanced down, still half engaged in conversation, until her expression changed. Not dramatically, but enough. A second later, my father's phone buzzed too. He picked it up immediately, read it, and then looked at me. There are moments when someone realizes something important, and you can actually see the understanding arrive. Slowly, uncomfortably. "Renata," he said, his voice lower now, uncertain. What did you do? Celeste looked between us, confused. What's going on? I kept my tone level. That was a banking notification, I said. Authorized access to the account has been removed. Silence, not the casual silence from earlier, not the polite pause between conversations. This silence had weight. Celeste frowned. What does that even mean? It means, I said, the account that's paying for the flights, the hotel, and the venue deposit, I paused just slightly, is no longer accessible to anyone but me. The shift this time was immediate. You need to fix that. Celeste's voice snapped, sharp, rising. Right now. I don't, I said. My father pushed his chair back halfway, the legs scraping faintly against the floor. This is not the time for this. I know, I replied calmly. You made that clear earlier. That landed. I wasn't loud. I wasn't emotional, and somehow that made it worse. I'm not part of this trip, I continued. I understand that now. I looked at my mother, then at Celeste, then back at my father. I'm just making sure the finances reflect the guest list. No one spoke, and in that silence, for the first time in years, I wasn't the one adjusting. I stood up, slowly, deliberately. I folded my napkin, carefully the way my mother had taught me when I was 7, and placed it beside my plate. That small gesture felt important. Not to them. To me, I reached for my jacket. Renata, don't do this, my father said. Not commanding, not angry, something closer to unsettled. Celeste said something too, but her voice had shifted into something higher, tighter, urgent. I didn't respond. Because there was nothing left to explain. By the time I reached the door, the room had already started to fracture behind me. Voices overlapping. Questions. Sharp edges forming where there hadn't been any before. I stepped outside. And the quiet hit me immediately. Cool air. Stillness. No expectations. I sat in my car for a moment. Hands resting lightly on the steering wheel. Not thinking about what I had just done. Not replaying it. Just sitting in the absence of noise. Then I started the engine and drove home. The calls began the next morning, and they didn't stop. My phone lit up before I even got out of bed. Celeste, 3 missed calls, 2 voicemails. The first one was anger, immediate, unfiltered. How could you do this? Do you even understand what you've just ruined? The second was something else, not softer, but less certain. You need to call me back. A pause. Then quieter, this isn't funny. I didn't call back. By the afternoon, my mother started messaging. Long texts, carefully worded, about family, about forgiveness, about how these things happen and shouldn't be allowed to create permanent damage. She never mentioned what she had said at the table. Not once. My father took a different approach. Shorter messages, more direct, he talked about logistics, deposits, deadlines, numbers. Some of this isn't refundable. As a family, we've already committed. We need to resolve this quickly. Not a single message, not one, acknowledged the reason any of this had happened. That was the part that stayed with me, not the anger. Not the pressure, the omission, as if the problem wasn't what had been said, but that I had responded to it. Without the account, everything unraveled faster than they expected. The venue in Nice required confirmation. It didn't get it. Deposit forfeited. The hotel block, reserved for 14 people, was released within days. Flights were never booked. The trip didn't collapse all at once. It dissolved. Quietly, logically. Like something that had only existed as long as one condition held true. And now it didn't. Months later, the wedding still happened, but not in Nice. A small banquet hall in town, 30 people maybe, simple, contained. I wasn't there. I sent a card, and for the first time in 7 years, I stopped contributing. No more transfers, no more quiet support, no more structural fixes. At first, I expected something to break, some emergency, some crisis, some moment where they would need me again, but it didn't happen. Weeks passed, then months, and nothing came. No urgent calls, no sudden problems, no situations that required me to step in and stabilize things. It was quiet, strangely quiet, and slowly something uncomfortable became undeniable. Maybe they hadn't needed me the way I thought they did. Maybe they had just relied on me because I was there, because I made it easy. Like leaving a door unlocked. People don't question access when it's always available. They just walk in, and when you lock it, they don't adapt immediately. They leave. My life changed in small, almost unremarkable ways. I made decisions about money without factoring in anyone else. Just me and my son. I opened a new savings account, this time with one authorized user, myself. I started seeing a therapist, not because everything had fallen apart, but because something had shifted. She didn't use heavy words, didn't label things, didn't tell me what to feel. She mostly asked questions and waited. One afternoon, she asked, "Do you think you were trying to buy belonging?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I think I was trying to prove I deserved it." She nodded, like that distinction mattered. I'm still not sure if it does. Some people would say I overreacted, that it was just a comment, a moment, a misunderstanding, maybe, but moments don't exist in isolation. They land on top of everything that came before. And that night at that table, I finally saw the structure clearly, not emotionally, not symbolically. Practically, I had been the invisible support, the thing that held everything up without being seen. And when I was no longer convenient, I was easy to leave out. So I adjusted the structure, and everything else followed. I don't think about nice anymore. Not the venue, not the trip, not what it could have been. I think about the drive home that night. The highway, empty, quiet. I remember turning off the radio, because the silence felt like something I had earned. And if you've ever been the person everyone depends on, right up until the moment they don't, then you already know. The real question isn't whether you were needed. It's whether you were valued. And once you see the difference, you can't unsee it. So what do you do then? Do you keep showing up the same way you always have? Or do you finally decide that enough is enough? If this story made you stop and think for even a second, you already know your answer.